This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Joby Martin, typically whenever I hop into one of these, I have a pretty good idea of like a funny cold open, but you just got through telling me that I may have hurt either bodily or the feelings of our mutual friend, Matt Chandler. I don't know, because you said he told you a little something because he was hanging out with me and then he hopped on an airplane and went and hung out with you. I guess he was talking some trash. Is that what I've come to find out?
I wouldn't call it that. He just said that you guys rolled and what you think is rolling light and fun is more intense than you think. Something like that.
So is it possible
that's
that
about right? That is about everything you think is on a 5 is actually on a 9.5.
That's what I was going to ask. Does that roll over to all areas of my life? So kind of like whenever I'm giving someone encouragement and then they start melting in front of me, is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes, I think you, Intense Kyle is your name.
Well, whenever Matt and I were rolling, here's the thing with rolling. We'll get to a position where somebody, this is when you're rolling with anybody, but somebody that just hasn't been training for as long as you have or doesn't have, distinct physical advantages or isn't as good a shape or whatever the scenario is. So just general advice is at some point during the round, you got to show them what's happening. Like what would really happen. But that doesn't have to be for the whole 6 minutes. But at some point so sometimes when I roll with white belts, like I'll kind of let them move around. I'll let them work, as they say. But at some point during that 6 minutes, I just got to let them know to where it's just, because that's the guys that taught me when I was a white belt and a blue belt, the brown belts and purple belts that smashed me and the black belts that smashed me. At some point during the round, they needed to let me know. And I'll tell the story because you've heard it before. It was one of the most disrespectful and equally funny things that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Tyler Murrah, who's a world champion now, but he's a purple belt, I'm a white belt. We're about the same size, so we're training together a lot. We're both competing. At one point, he gets me in side control, so I'm on bottom, and he's on top side control. And we're near the edge of the mat, and I am trying with every fiber of my being to get out of this position. Well, he realizes he's a little thirsty. So he reaches off the mat, grabs a bottle of water, unscrews and it's one of those really thin plastic bottles to where like you have to be careful unscrewing it. So he just unscrews the bottle, the top, sets it down, takes a little sip, screws the cap back on, sets it down, and continues rolling. All the while, Joby, I'm trying to escape. So he let me know without letting me know. Okay, let's go.
I have it. Yeah. I'm rolling with Royce Gracie probably 15 years ago or something long time ago. And he just is knee belly with no hands even really. He's just kind of surfing knee belly, and I tapped. And he was like, that is not a move. And I was like, I can't breathe, man. I don't know what to tell you, but your knee is in my lung, and I thought I was going to throw up or die. And so I'm so sorry.
What's funny about that is I've done that to people with knee on belly, and I like to do body triangle whenever I take the back. And so I've tapped a lot of people to body triangle, but all I will do is I will loosen the body triangle a little bit, and I will just say, that's not a submission. And then we just keep going because they're just like, because the first time it happens to you, and again, I remember at white belt, I remember going to meet with my chiropractor, and I'm like, I think all my ribs are broken. I think all of them, like, I don't know how many there are, but if you had to count them, I think they're all broken. And he just checked and he's like, no, none of them are broken. But I'm like, no, seriously, because I'm getting just knee on belly and just smashed and stacked and all kinds of things. And your body just isn't used to it. But your body, it kind of builds up calluses. Your entire body becomes one giant callus.
Yeah, you do quit panic tapping because that's what that is. That's a panic tap.
Right.
Or like a neck crank. You're like, whoa. And it's not actually, like, you can survive.
It's not actually a thing. But speaking of survival, I think that the human race, here's your segue of all segues. I think that the human race is up against something where we probably won't survive. And that's AI. And that's what we're going to talk about here at the beginning. So my first question has to do with artificial intelligence, or you can look at it as artificial general intelligence, AGI, large language models. We have, the combination of AI with quantum computing. And when somebody tries to explain quantum computing to me, I don't have the brain power to fully understand what's happening and like what they're saying and kind of how this all goes. But I've heard it said, and I'm going to put it to you, we've got a few questions about AI. Some people are like, hey, all these things are an answer to the Tower of Babel, right? That I've heard it phrased that way. And it's kind of like, hey, we're close to the end times here because the story of Tower of Babel in Genesis, it's like these people are trying to ascend to God, and God basically said, we're done with all this and let's just kind of like, let's break this up. All right. And like some people are like, oh, God was worried that humans were going to reach him or like we're going to take over. And I'm like, that's one of the cutest things I've ever heard. But what is your read on AI as a tool, as a threat to humanity? Are we going to go all iRobot here? What's going on?
Well, I am the Terminator 2 generation. So that is in the back of my head.
Skynet, man.
Every time they equip, one of these like walking dogs with a gun, I'm like, have you not seen Terminator 2? Like, could we at least keep that as a possibility out there? I think the word tool is probably the best word. Every tool has been used for both. Like many, many people have been fed because of the wonderful work of a shovel, and many people have had their head chopped off by the sharp edge of a shovel. And so like anything, it probably has to do more with whose hands it's in. I guess the scary part is if it would ever become sentient. I don't know how that's possible necessarily, but there does seem to be some people saying that, it tries to rewrite its code when being shut down. I don't know. The reality is I forget what it's called, but whatever technology is available, people are going to use it to the nth degree. And that definitely should give us some serious caution as we delve into this. I think some people are too optimistic, they're too purist. They don't realize that all people can become benevolent and it just goes real bad. And then there's some people that are too afraid. They were also afraid of the microwave and the internet and cable television. So it's something to definitely be aware of. Yeah, I'm way behind the times on this too, because I don't really use AI very much at all in my own life, to my knowledge, other than maybe use ChatGPT like a Google search. But, I definitely have people that are very close to us, like Jay Owen. He's like on the cutting edge of it. I will tell you things that are very scary. Jay, a friend of ours, Jay Owen, took a picture, just simply a picture of me, and made that thing talk as if I'm talking. And I do think there's going to be a lot of kind of slanderous things that happen to people that they didn't actually say. And that's something that makes me very nervous, as it should you. Me and you got a lot of YouTube videos of me and you talking. If they can just put different words in our mouths, that could go real bad real quick.
One I've thought about before, because again, my entire business is content creation, right? And so again, there's going to be a value system created around in-person meetings, right? Things that cannot be faked through a screen. So there's going to be an increase in that. But I've thought about that as well. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of both of us talking on the internet. Like Joe Rogan's talked about several times. There are companies using his voice to do ads, saying, "Hey, this is Joe Rogan here. We're selling thong sandals today." And he just kind of goes into this launch. He's like, "Yeah, that's not me." And there's only so many things you can do to cease and desist companies that technically don't exist, right? And so the difference with the AI revolution, then, people were like, "Oh, the Model T is going to put horse and buggy operators out of work." And thing. The difference is we're letting a computer think for us, right? Letting the computer decide and to dictate terms to us. And I've seen a bunch of stories here recently. Well, there was a kid that was graduating from college, and they normally put crap on the top of their whatever hat they wear, and they had the ChatGPT symbol on top of it, basically signaling, I didn't study, I didn't write those papers, I had ChatGPT do it. There's a guy that divorced his wife to marry his AI, right? So this is basically the Joaquin Phoenix movie, Her, right? It's basically that exact thing happening in real life. Yep. I've heard about ChatGPT helping minors find out how to get abortions and to keep it from their parents. Not just, hey, where's the nearest abortion facility that doesn't require parental consent? The ChatGPT is responding and saying, and hey, in order to keep this away from your parents, make sure you throw away the receipt in a different trash can outside your house, and like showing them how to cover things up. And again, every time any type of AI system is tested, it's always left-leaning. right? It's always in the image of its creators. And then when you have AGI, or the sentience they're talking about is, oh, the AIs are talking to each other. They realize you speak English. And so now the AI is going to change languages so you can't understand what they're saying. And this actually goes to a question that we got from one of our donors. Thank you to Robert. Again, if you want to be in the question bank for Ask a Pastor, you got to be one of our monthly donors. But he basically is talking about how many pastors are using things like pulpit.ai and ChatGPT and Google Gemini and all that to prepare their Sunday messages, to prepare their, home group questions, to prepare their like digital assets for their church to kind of like keep their church engaged. And I use ChatGPT the same way you do. I use it as like a deep Google search. Like I'll put, ChatGPT and Grok up and I'll type the same question in, and just to make sure I got my facts straight, right? As opposed to like going through the pages and pages of Google. But man, it's one of those nefarious things when pastors are like, man, writing sermons is hard. I don't have, 3 days in the woods to go write my sermon or anything like that. Like I've got all these things. I got a side job, right? Because I'm just trying to make ends meet. And so ChatGPT is just helping me. So what are your thoughts on pastors specifically using AI?
So first of all, I love the way you frame the question, because you've actually had to stand in a pulpit in front of people and open the Bible and preach.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes the people that are hypercritical of what pastors are doing, bro,
never had to
you've
do that.
never walked in a, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I will say, so I've never used ChatGPT or any AI model to write a sermon, but currently I've never felt like I had to. Now I do use a research team of human beings, and instead of me taking 8 hours to go find like, some kind of second century, what does this word mean? Whatever, I've got teams of people, which is basically what a commentary is. It's just people that have already done that kind of stuff for you, so you can reference it. And like you said, not everybody has the luxury that I have. I mean, I've got an incredible staff, an incredible team of people. And because of that, I get tens of hours a week to just spend writing my sermon. So far in my life, I've never needed to go outside of my Bible, a couple of my references to write a sermon. All right. So then I think the problem, it would just be the heart of it. If all you're doing is copying and pasting and not prayer and study, that's a real problem, and eventually it will show up. And the reality is people are doing it all the time anyway. I mean, the number of people that send me clips of other people preaching my sermons, I get it all the time. And if you're going to do that, I would just tell you, go ahead, use it. You can use everything I have. If it helps you preach better sermons, just be honest about it. That's right. It. Just be honest. And there's a difference between a personal story of mine and just an illustration. You know what I mean? So be honest with the folks. But I would be very, 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 very careful, because getting information, like you're saying, it, just using it as a tool to make sure you're teaching right doctrine or it's the right verse, for sure. But if you're just copying and pasting something that the Lord's not downloading to you, you're on very thin ice very quickly. Now, you've heard me preach a bunch. There are so many times where I will say, I heard a preacher once say, or my good friend, I use Matt Chandler probably as much as anybody. Just give credit where credit is due, because your people don't really care. They just, and what you're trying to do is just serve your folks. One of the things that makes me nervous about the ChatGPT situation is, and I heard somebody online say this, just a couple of years ago, you type into Google a question and it just says, here's all the places you can find these answers. And today it just gives you an answer. That's dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. That's how you get AI models that, paint our founding fathers as minorities and stuff like that, as opposed to just showing you the sources. It's just giving you an answer. And because it's a large language model, like you said, it has been created. It's all dependent on what it was sourced with.
Correct.
And if you just source it with false things, you're going to get false answers. So I'd be very, very careful about that.
Hey guys, real quick. According to a recent Gallup poll, only 31% of Americans express confidence in the mass media to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. And that is the lowest mark in 50 years. And then on the entertainment side of things, you simply can't sit your children down in front of the TV screen anymore without worrying about them being propagandized by left-wing weirdos. I mean, you remember when that Disney employee came out, they were caught saying on camera that they have a not-so-secret gay agenda with their kids' content? Yeah, no bueno. So it is time for you to stop giving your attention and money to media and entertainment companies that hate your values and the truth. And that's why I want you to become an all-access member of Daily Wire Plus. And guys, they have an exclusive offer to Undaunted Lifers, so I'll get to that here in just a second. But I've been consuming Daily Wire content for at least a decade at this point. I first became an all-access member of Daily Wire Plus just to support them, but they've given me so much value in return. So I've benefited, greatly from their podcasts and their articles and their documentaries and docuseries. And it's just been really helpful for me to solidify my conservative philosophies and thoughts. So guys, what do you get with an all-access membership to Daily Wire Plus? So you get live Q&As with Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Jordan Peterson, and more. You also get groundbreaking documentaries like What is a Woman and Am I Racist? You get the entire Jordan Peterson library, so that includes his Exodus and Gospels series, which were just spectacular. And also you get full uncensored access to all of the Daily Wire podcasts. You get complete access to every article on dailywire.com, full access to BentKey. So that is their children's TV show and movies app that has all the content you want, and you're not going to have to worry about them trying to turn your kids gay. You get two leftist tears tumblers, and you get a whole lot more. Guys, it's time to get your content and news from a conservative, patriotic company. Click the link in the show notes for this episode. If you want the link, it's getdwplus.com/undaunted. That's getdwplus.com/undaunted, or the link in the show notes. Use the promo code Kyle30 to get 30% off of your subscription. Again, go to the show notes and click the link, promo code Kyle30 to get 30% off of your subscription to Daily Wire Plus. Put your money where your values are and subscribe to Daily Wire Plus today. Yeah, because everyone looks at AI's outputs and they forget about the inputs, right? Because it's not thinking for itself right now. And you're exactly right. The best AI thing. So like ChatGPT will put the sources in there, but you know how people use it? They use it like they use a book. Whenever there's a bunch of footnotes and crap, only nerds go to the back and look at the bibliography and like, oh, I wonder if that's what it actually said. And, shout out to all the nerds out there. We love you guys. But at the same time, like people are just, they got too many things going on. They need the answer and they need it now. And one thing that I was thinking about as well is like, again, you said we need to be very careful, very cautious. I'm the exact same way. I look at my ChatGPT use in the same way that I would use the Logos Bible software, right? So go to any of our Forging Table episodes for like last year and you can get the Logos Bible software at a discount. But there are things that I'm like, okay, I know there's a scripture that's kind of in this vein of this thing I'm trying to figure out for the Daily Blade. Dadgummit, it's just not there. Now I can start flipping through a couple thousand pages of the Bible, or I could plug it into Logos, or I can plug it into ChatGPT, or I can plug it into both. And in ChatGPT, there are sub-GPTs, I don't even know what that means, that are Bible specific. And I've kind of trained my Bible specific ChatGPT like, hey, give me the verses in ESV, bring it in from a more of a reformed perspective, but also like, don't summarize the text. Like, give me the actual text. And so, like, I remember the Titanic series I did for the Daily Blade, which I just, I loved that one. I loved working on it. I loved recording it. Like, it was great.
It too.
It helped me figure out some things historically about these stories that I didn't get from Wikipedia. And Wikipedia is problematic because who's the one making the edits? And is the edit inaccurate or accurate right now? And so I'm looking at Wikipedia, ChatGPT, and Grok, and the documentary that I just recently watched. And I'm summarizing through all of them to figure out, okay, this is what's true according to the historical record, which some people are like, that seems incredibly like crazy and like a long time. But imagine me doing this research 75 years ago, right?
Right.
How am I going to get...
According to AI, you were dead a couple weeks ago. Remember when you died?
That's right. I remember. But you know what? I've made a pretty good comeback, all right? You asked Matt Chandler, right? I think my body came back from the dead pretty good. So, all right, let's leave AI there for a little bit. Let's move on. I want to move on to Steve. He goes to church with you, right? So that's how you can tell he goes to COE. Too. Now, he basically just talks about his background. He was raised Church of Christ. And so he said he learned works-based righteousness theology, free will theology, salvation is not assured theology. Essentially, you can lose that. And then he talks about how he, became a follower of Christ, started attending Church 1122. But I want to start his question around the in the middle here. I began to further my personal studies deeper into Scripture. I then realized two things. I bring no merit to the equation, and that faith was granted to me as a gift from God. At that point, the light bulb went off and I realized, oh, dang, I think I'm a Calvinist. I dove into Tulip, all the studies, videos, etc. It has been life-changing to say the least. So here's his question, right? So all you Tulipers out there, you're going to love it. My question to Joby: why do you not preach more on these fundamental concepts of Calvinism, as they are at the heart of the gospel message, in my opinion? And I can't think of anything more powerful and liberating and encouraging to the believer than the realization that they bring no merit and that even faith is a gift from God. Personally, my wife and I would love to hear you preach on Calvinism, as you are an incredible pastor and teacher, blah, blah, and then they just slobber and give you all these compliments. You don't need to hear any of those. But yeah, so there's the question. Go for it.
Because I preach the Bible is my core text, not Calvin's Institutes. That's why. Now, I too am reformed in my soteriology, so you will hear me say things like, we're, not mistakers in need of a life coach. We're wretched, black-hearted sinners. If you want to use the word total depravity, you can, but Calvin made up that word. That's not like a Bible word. And so what tulip is Calvin's understanding of soteriology. And so again, while I think that Ephesians 2 and Romans 9 and Romans 10 and all those places lead me to the same place that you have arrived in regards to our salvation and that faith is a gift from God, I always teach those things. I'm just not using your Calvinistic buzzwords. That's it. If you use a few different words, we talk about tulip all the time, about unconditional election and limited atonement and perseverance of the saints. But I'm just not trying to use theological buzzwords to make the Calvinists happy. I'm just trying to teach the Bible. And so you got the cart before the horse a little bit there. I feel like if you study the scriptures deeply and long enough, you will also have a reformed soteriology, because it's just what the Bible says. I just try to use the words the Bible uses, or I use modern day vernacular, not words from 500 years ago. And especially from a guy that was just trying to refute another guy's bad theology. So that's why I don't even use the word Calvinism, because I also don't believe in baby baptism or a state church, which he did. So reformed theology or reformed soteriology would be the words I would use. But even when I'm preaching, I barely use those words. I just talk about that the only thing we bring to our salvation is the sin that requires it, things like that all the time. And so this happens a lot. If you're not actually listening to the sermon, but you're just listening for buzzwords, then sometimes you'll miss the point of the sermon. So be very careful about looking for buzzwords.
Joby, this is coming out a little bit later, but I posted a clip from my interview I did with JT English, which shout out to JT English. He was a fantastic guy to talk to. But I was going on one of my rants about the church being weak and about all these different things. And what I said I said, these people, they talk about Jesus, like he never did anything wrong and da-da-da-da. And what people heard is they're like, is Kyle implying that Jesus was a sinner? It's like, no, one word was not as precise as I would have liked. If you look at the context of the rant, if you listen to the, minute and 10 seconds of the rant, you obviously get that I'm like, people are acting as if Jesus never did anything that other people would say was wrong or violent or inappropriate. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're only listening for this one thing, and for all these people that are, again, as a content creator, I do have a lot of grace for content creators that misspeak, because I clearly know when they misspeak, right? And then I clearly know when they mean what they're saying. And if they misspeak, I'm like, bro, we got like 800 episodes. The number of times that I've misspoke on the Daily Blade, which hurts even worse because it's like 5 minutes. So it's like, that's not as many words as you would like. So yeah, you got to have a little grace for people. Don't just listen for your favorite buzzwords. We got to move along if we're going to get through the rest of these questions. And the next question is from me. I've been thinking about this a lot here recently. So we have the commandment to not murder. Obviously, murder and killing are not the same thing. It relates to just war theory, right? We don't need to get too deep into that. If someone breaks into your house and is trying to do harm to your property or your people, and you hurt that person and kill them in the process, you are justified, by law in most jurisdictions and by biblically. But this is what I was thinking, because I was thinking about how you and I were talking about the preemptive attack that Israel had on Iran, right? My example of your next door neighbor building a cannon that's pointed at you, and then if you could take out that cannon, wouldn't you do it? But then I was thinking about it in the context of people like abortionists. And again, I'm not trying to trap Joby here. There's no wink, wink going on here, guys. I'm honestly trying to think, Joby, of an argument against killing people like abortionists or like evil dictators that are starving their people to death or someone like that. So think someone deeply, darkly evil. And I just need a little bit of help thinking through that, because I'm like, here I am. I feel very comfortable about the argument about preemptively attacking Iran before they have a chance to kill your people. But then I'm like, what about the abortionist that's just stopping by Starbucks and then hopping into the office to kill 17 babies that day? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this funny enough, this goes back to why I answered the "Don't kill baby Hitler" the way I did, and it
Yeah.
has to do with the authority given to you by God. And what like vigilante justice is not justice. Like, we can't just go track down murderers and kill them because even though that might be because they deserve it or whatever, that God has inserted, government in particular to handle those kinds of responsibilities. And that's where it gets tricky. I mean, and what is, my friend Josh Howerton has talked about this a lot. What is true for a government or a state is not necessarily true for an individual either, right? Like, you and I don't have the authority to go find murderers or child rapists and do what we think ought to be done with them, even and circumvent the process by which the Lord has established. That has a lot to do with it. And then when it comes to things like Israel and Iran, I mean, I have opinions. We all have opinions, and I just have such a limited information. I just wonder what I would think if I had all the information that the people that have all the information have. And so I do know that one of the things that begins to happen when people try to take justice into their own hand, they actually don't trust the cross of Christ. And what I mean by that is the cross of Christ will prevail in every human being's life. People either will be covered by the grace of Jesus at the cross, only if they surrender their life to Christ, or they will be covered by the justice of the wrath of God that did not get taken by Jesus on the cross because they did not pisteuo in him. And you have to believe that the vengeance is God's. Now, if God has made you the president or senator or representative, then you should work like crazy to change the laws to make sure that you're protecting the unborn. But to take that into your own hand, I think, is outside of God's plan for how justice is enacted in this world.
All right, very good. I appreciate you going into that detail. I haven't gotten an angry message from your assistant yet, even though we're close to time. So we're just going to keep going. We're just going to go right through this. All right, next one. This is from Zach, not the Forging Table Zach, but this is from Zach. Thank you for being a donor. Can something be sinful for someone, but not for someone else? Like tattoos. My grandparents think that it's a sin to get them, and I don't. Alcohol, saying cuss words, gambling, watching certain movies, blah, blah. Joby, I actually answered this for a guy recently because he emailed me and said, I've come to the conclusion that drinking alcohol in any way, shape, or form is bad because we don't want to cause our neighbor to stumble and, all those types of things. I was like, okay, well, are you going to eat Doritos in front of your fat friends? Because that's also like, that could cause someone that's slothful and, overweight and all that and not honoring God with their bodies, that could cause them to stumble as well because they're really like, I need some Cool Ranch Doritos now. And so I guess the way I've described it to people is like, there are people, Joby, that are friends of mine that if they have one drink, they are sinning because they worshiped at the altar of alcohol and they've never been able to have a drink. One's always turned into 7, right? But for me to have one drink, I've never been drunk in my entire life, and I've never worshiped at the altar of alcohol. I look at it as a good, great gift from God, a social enhancement that, God gave to us and all those types of things. But again, it's like drunkenness is the category, but for someone else, is it like maybe idolatry starts to work in if they have any type of exposure to a particular sin? Is that if that's making sense?
Yeah, Paul actually addresses this head on, but the example that he uses is food sacrificed to idols. And theologians call it a matter of conscience. And so the actual act of, in this case, eating a steak that had been sacrificed to a false god, Paul says, technically there's nothing wrong with it. But if it bothers your conscience, don't do it. And if it bothers the people around you, then you should just, you should be considerate of, you don't want to abuse your freedom at their expense. So you could take whatever the thing is, and you start mentioning a bunch of examples. It could be tattoos. It could be drinking. Drinking's probably the easiest one there. It's just a matter of conscience. That's just what it is. You cannot do a deep dive in the scriptures and say that drinking fermented wine is a sin. You just can't. It's just not in there. So if you become a legalist and add stuff to the scriptures, then that's what the Pharisees did, and you don't want to do that. But you don't want to also be too licentious like those in Corinth did and say, well, I'm free to do whatever, and the rest of you deal with it. So community matters. Not worshiping at the idol of self, regardless of which ditch you fall in. You don't want to do that either. But for sure, there are matters of conscience. Like my grandma, if she wore pants to church, she would feel like she's sinning, even though I don't think she is at all, right? But it's just the era that she grew up in. And so for her, that's a matter of conscience. Now, for her to get super judgy about what anybody else wore to church, that would be just the same kind of sin, just on the other side of it. So you got to be really, really careful with that. What a legalist is what the Lord reveals is good for me, I say is required for you. You want to be very, very careful with that.
All right, very good. Let's go to the next one. This is Will, who is a member of Church 1122 and a member of Dominion Team 1. Had a good question for us.
Go.
Did Jesus know that he was the Son of God as a child? And did he already know the rescue plan? If he didn't know, then was he just incapable of sinning? And if he was incapable of sinning, why did the devil try to tempt him anyway?
I think you got to talk about the dual nature or the two wills of God, like he is fully God and fully man. So while God is all powerful, yet Jesus got tired and hungry. So those things are both true at the same time and they don't counteract one another. And so Jesus is omnipotent, and yet he was still born as a baby and needed his mom. So these things are all true at the same time. The evidence to me is, of course, he knew who he was. Like when he's 12 years old, he's like, I'm in my Father's house. That was not like common vernacular of what you called the temple. That's what the Son of God would call the temple. When John chapter 2, the thing you want to do when you answer these kind of questions is not, here's what I think. The first thing you want to do is say, has the Bible addressed this? And if not directly, has it addressed it indirectly? So when he's 12 years old, he calls this his Father's house. At 30 years old, in John 2, before really any ministry has happened, he tells Mary, my time has not yet come, which means I know my time is coming to do what the Father has sent me to do. And what he sent me to do was to give my life as a ransom for many. You put a bunch of those verses together, and yes, Jesus knows that he's the Son of God. And because he is a man, he is tempted in every way that we are. And the words just mean what they mean. So if it's not tempting, it's not temptation. So Jesus was actually tempted. It's what the word says, which means in his flesh, he would have had the ability to disobey his Father, but in his divinity, he did not ever.
All right, last question of the day, Joby. We always get real serious here towards the end. We ask some questions. No zingers, nothing coming out of left field here at the end. But let's just say you were forced by threat of violence to change your first name. Okay, we like Joby. We like that it's got, it's a family name thing. It's carried on and all those types of things. We don't know that many Jobys, so it's unique, right? So here we are, but the person threatening you with violence says you only have two options. These can be your first names. Joby's out. All the others are out. Which one are you going with? Judas or Adolf?
Wow. That is incredible.
It's your only two options. There is not a third option. There's not a, but I need to raise.
Where do you get these questions? Are these ChatGPT questions? Are these brother, like, what is the worst, most impossible question?
Joby, when I lay down at night is when my brain kicks into high gear. I can't fall asleep. I think about crap like this, and I'm just texting it and putting it in my little notes here. Those are your only options. See, you can't weasel out this like the Hitler one, like, oh, I would just make sure he ended up with a Christian pastor and blah, blah, blah. No.
Yeah. No, I hear you. No, I'll answer straight up. I guess I would go Adolf because, the Bible says Judas was filled with the devil himself, and he betrayed Jesus. I don't know, man. Wow. Of all the terrible choices, I don't know. I
Adolf Martin. Because we got Joby Martin, we got Charles Martin. Now we got Adolf Martin. I think It's got a decent ring to it. It's not terrible. And here's the thing, guys. If you honestly believe that, Adolf Hitler didn't kill himself and he escaped to what was it, Argentina or somewhere, Venezuela? Yeah, Argentina or something like that. There is a chance he found Christ. I'm just saying, the gospel can cover a multitude of sin here. But I think, I don't know. And what was it? Dante's Inferno, the darkest and deepest pit of hell. Isn't Satan chewing and eating Judas? I think that's something, if I remember correctly from Dante's Inferno, Judas is being eaten alive by Satan for eternity. I mean, that's something, right? I don't know. I can't remember if Hitler was mentioned there or not.
Yeah, there's a couple names you definitely don't want to go with. So what about you? What would you choose there, host?
Sorry, Joby, this is my show. That's all the time we got. Joby, anything you got left for us before we get you out of here?
No, my name is Joby Martin, just for the record.
Just for the record. All right. Talk to you next month.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.